May consume to my friend from Iowa, Mr. Steve King.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the gentleman from Texas for yielding to me here this afternoon. And I come to the floor here at the United States House of Representatives with a specific purpose today, and that's to address an issue that's become a controversy. I regret that. I made a freshman mistake a week ago today when I took a call from a reporter from the New York Times. And that was a 56-minute interview without a tape. That resulted in a long article. In that article were snippets of the 56-minute interview. Part of that inquiry was about the history of the immigration policy in this country for over the last, say, 18 or so years, of which I have been a significant part, especially in Iowa, as we have a voice to shape policy and help these presidential candidates move on to the Oval Office. I'm grateful that much of the policy that was debated then is in the Oval Office today, and it's being debated all over this country. But one phrase in that long article has created an unnecessary controversy. That was my mistake, Mr. Speaker. And so I want to start this out with some context to that discussion, and that is this, that if you can control the language, you can control the policy. Labels have been hurled in this country at people like we have never seen in this history of America. I made a point on this in a September 12th tweet that I sent out as a component of this broader dialogue. And here is the tweet, verbatim, Mr. Speaker. The word Nazi is injected into leftist talking points because the worn out and exhausted word racist is overused and applied to nearly everyone. That's the foundation for that discussion with, at least part of that discussion with the New York Times reporter, Mr. Speaker. And in that also was discussion of other terms that had been used, almost always unjustly labeling otherwise innocent people. The word racist, the word Nazi, the word fascist, the phrase white nationalist, the phrase white supremacist. They even are derogatory towards Western civilization, which is the foundation for the American civilization, and we're today the flagship. So at this point, I'll read the quote that had brought about this controversy, Mr. Speaker, and this is from the New York Times article titled, Before Trump, Steve King set the agenda for the wall and anti-immigrant politics, which, by the way, is a bit pejorative because I've never been anti-immigrant. I have been anti-illegal immigrant, and I remain that way. But here's the quote. It says, quote, white nationalist, white supremacist, and this is from me, by the way, Mr. Speaker, white nationalist, white supremacist, Western civilization, how did that language become offensive? Mr. King said, why did I sit in classes teaching me about the merits of our history and our civilization? That's off of this article, and that's the substance of this heartburn that seems to be churning across the media in America today. And so I look at that and I think, well, what was that conversation? It was about how those words got plugged into our dialogue, not when the words became offensive, which is what the technical interpretation of this is. How did that language become offensive? It's how did that offensive language get injected into our political dialogue? Who does that? How does it get done? How do they get by with laying labels like this on people? And when I ask the question, why did I sit in classes teaching me about the merits of our history and our civilization? That response was strictly for, why did I sit in Western civilization classes to hear about the merits of our history? I've never sat in a class at any time and heard any merits about any of those other names, including I've never heard a merit about racist. I never heard a merit about Nazi or fascist or white nationalist or white supremacist. But Western civilization has merit, and I remain a defender. So I put together a statement which is public, and I choose to read it into the record now, Mr. Speaker, and it's this, and I quote, today the New York Times is suggesting that I'm an advocate for white nationalism and white supremacy. I want to make one thing abundantly clear. I reject those labels and the evil ideology that they define. Further, I condemn anyone that supports this evil and bigoted ideology, which saw in its ultimate expression the systematic murder of 6 million innocent Jewish lives. It's true that, like the Founding Fathers, I am an advocate for Western civilization's values, and that I profoundly believe that America is the greatest tangible expression of these ideals the world has ever seen. Under any fair political definition, I am simply an American nationalist. America's values are expressed in our founding documents. They are attainable by everyone, and we take pride that people of all races, religions, and creeds from around the globe aspire to achieve them. I am dedicated to keeping America this way. This conviction does not make me a white nationalist or a white supremacist. So once again, I reject those labels and the ideology they define. And as I told the New York Times, it's not about race. It's never been about race. One of my most strongly held beliefs is that we are all created in God's image, and that human life is sacred in all of its forms. And all of my life's work, all of my public record, all of my bills, all of my votes, all of my activities support that statement, that that human life is sacred in all of its forms and that we are created in God's image. So, Mr. Speaker, I regret the heartburn that has poured forth upon this Congress and this country, and especially in my state and in my congressional district. But the people who know me know I wouldn't have to even make this statement, because they do know me. They know my life, they know my history, they know that I have lived in the same place since 1978. There's nothing about my family or my history or my neighborhood or that would suggest that these false allegations could be supported by any activity whatsoever. I reject that ideology. I defend American civilization, which is an essential component of Western civilization. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back to the gentleman from Texas and thank him again for the opportunity to address you here on the floor of the United States House of Representatives.
And I thank my friend from Iowa. I've traveled with him, been different parts of the country and different parts of the world with my friend